to the show where
Welcome to Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. Want to connect with Howie? Email him at howie@israelnewstalkradio.com. Now here's your host, Howie Silberger.
And welcome to Political Hitman. My name is Howie Silberger, and I am happy to be here with you. And I'm glad that you are tuning in to the show with me. Political Hitman is heard on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Check out the website, IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. If you want to get in touch with me, you could do so by emailing Howie@IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. It's that simple, really. It sounds easy, doesn't it? It is easy. And that's why you should feel free to contact me anytime by email, Howie@IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. So I've been doing radio for an extremely long time. In fact, longer than I'd like to imagine. This is my 30th year on the radio. I know I don't sound it and I really don't look it, but I've been doing radio for about 30 years now. And in all the years I've been on the air, there's one thing that I've never understood. And it's really weird to say this because I've dissected everything. We've looked at every aspect of every possible political angle. But there's one thing that never really made sense to me and still makes no sense today. And that is how Jews living in a free country with the freedom to vote for whoever they feel they should vote for, always seem to choose to vote for people who are not in favor of them, in favor of their people, who do not support their causes, and who actively work against the Jewish people. It never fails to amaze me, and it amazes me every single election. I've done a lot of elections, and it never fails to amaze me every single election that there are always people, Jewish people, who back the groups of people who oppose them. It's fascinating. So we look at New York and the election of the new mayor of New York, a ardent anti-Zionist, a radical Islamist, a man who had stood at rallies. He's on video standing at rallies calling for globalizing the Intifada, which is calling for the indiscriminate killing of Jews. And he was elected as mayor of New York City. Elected mayor. Now, I'm not going to name him because I don't think I would even give him the dignity of saying his name. But at the end of the day, a good portion of his votes, as it was revealed, came from the Jewish community. I've had Jewish friends who have told me, hey, Howie, the election of this guy is great. Talk about inclusivity. Talk about love and peace. What love and peace are we talking about? The man called for the killing of Jews. The man called for globalizing the Intifada. So what peace are we talking about? What inclusivity are we talking about? Why would this be a good thing that this man is the mayor of the city that has the highest population of Jews outside of Israel? Why would this be a good thing? And no one's been able to explain it to me. Nobody's been able to tell me why this is a good thing. But people have told me it's a good thing. Believe me, Howie, it's a good thing. I don't know. The guy's a socialist. The guy's a communist. The guy is anti-Israel. He's anti-Jewish. And now he's the mayor of New York. Years and years and years ago, there was a scientist, a political scientist, who was speaking at a university. And he made a valid point. He said that much like the Soviets, and we all know about Yuri Breslov and his whole theory about the Soviets. He was a KGB agent, and he outlined the entire plan that the Soviets had to destabilize America, which worked, and we're seeing the results of that today. But we'll put that aside for a second. If you want to read up more about that or watch the professor giving that speech, just Google professor talking about Soviets taking over the world. But anyway, we'll move on from that. This professor that I went to hear, I don't remember his name. It was years and years and years ago. But this professor I went to hear was very clear when he said that the Islamic function, the way that they want to work, the way that they want things to happen, is that they are going to send people to all the corners of the earth. They're going to procreate, and they're going to take over country after country after country. This was about 20, 25 years ago. And we have seen that slowly happen, where radical Islam has taken over. You see it in Europe, all over Europe. Radical Islam is ruling the roost. Now you're starting to see it in North America with a radical Islamist elected as mayor of New York City. You're going to see it more and more radical Islamists taking over political positions. The truth is that the people who run for politics aren't the greatest people in the world. Good people don't run for politics. It used to be that, if you ran for politics, you were an esteemed member of society. It used to be that when you ran for politics, people actually supported you because they believed in your cause. That used to happen. But what's happened in the last 50 years, last 100 years, is that politicians have not been the greatest people in the world. And the reason for that is nobody wants their name slung through the mud. Now, with the advent of social media and the woke crowd dissecting every single word you've ever said since you were born, nobody wants to put themselves through that. Nobody wants to put their family through that. So good people who have nothing to hide and who would probably have a lot to offer society don't run for politics. I'll tell you, I ran for politics a couple of times, most recently a couple of months ago. I ran a campaign a couple of months ago. And the dirtiness that happens in politics, even in small campaigns, I ran for a very small job, a small elected position in a school board. But even a school board election, which to the general population is probably meaningless, even that got dirty, and I wasn't the one who got dirty. So when you're a good person running in politics and the politicians who are running against you, the people running against you, get dirty and you can't respond, you always lose. So good people in general don't run for politics. So who do you get into political power, who are running our countries, who are our representatives? They're the people who don't care about their reputation. They don't care about what people have to say about them. They're the people who run and just want power. They just want to be in office. They're power over everything. And that's who's running for office. That's who's in power. And so when you have a radical Islamist who's elected mayor of New York City, you just know that nobody ran against him that was even half decent. And you know that voter apathy allowed him to get in. And and people are going to say to me, oh, but Curtis Silwa, he was the spoiler vote. There's no such thing as a spoiler vote. In politics, I know they love using that term, spoiler vote. There is no such thing as a spoiler vote. Let's be honest. If the majority of the population wanted Joe Schmo to be elected, Joe Schmo would be elected. The only reason Joe Schmo wasn't elected is he didn't convince the majority of the population that he wanted to be elected, or the majority of the people voting that they should vote for him. Simple as that. There's no such thing as a spoiler. But here we go. So we have a radical Islamist as mayor of New York now. We have the Israeli government being pushed into a corner and forced to come to an agreement with a terrorist group that has held hostages, that held Israeli hostages, that murdered Israel, that tried to commit genocide against the Israeli people. And now they're being forced into a corner, forced to bend the knee to these terrorists who tried to kill them, showing their weakness to the Arab world, showing that that they could be trounced on, that they are controlled by other forces, that Israel's not a island unto itself, but it's being controlled by everyone else. And the Jewish weakness around the world just makes me wonder about the future of the Jewish people. And I know I talk about this a lot on this show. This is something I'm focused on. I'm hyper-focused on this. And I have been for years. The future of the Jewish people. Is there a future for the Jewish people anywhere in the world? When we depict ourselves as weak, when we depict ourselves as helpless, as victims, we are not helping ourselves. Nobody's going to feel bad for us. It's the most amazing thing in the world when you think about it. October 7th happened, and Hamas went into Israel and massacred Jews in Israel, massacred 1,000 people on one day, kidnapped hundreds. And somehow the victims of that attack, the Israelis, became the pariahs of the world. How does that happen? If this was an attack on a black church, or was an attack on Italians or on Greeks or on anyone else, the whole world would be sympathetic. The whole world would be bending over backwards, trying to help out that group. The whole world would be condemning it. World leaders would be getting up and condemning the attackers and throwing money and support at the victims, which is rightfully so. That's really the way it should happen. That we are all responsible for each other. And if there's one person that's victimized, we have to help them. But instead, only the Jews get this kind of treatment. Instead, the world turned against the Jewish people, turned against the state of Israel. And the state of Israel and Jews in general became pariahs around the world. And that's where we're living in. This is the world we're living in today, where somehow the victim suddenly wasn't the victim, suddenly was the oppressor. The victim was suddenly the bad guy. The guy had to be condemned. The guy that you can't sit next to on a bus. The guy you have to hurl slurs at. How did that happen? I'll tell you quite simply. It's easy. The answer is really simply right in front of you. If you are watching me on social media, that is the answer. That is how this happened. Mispropaganda, misinformation, and horrible propaganda diffused through Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and TikTok. Horrific misinformation. Horrific half stories. Horrific accusations that had absolutely no backing and no basis. Filtered through social media. And that really was never an issue before, because in previous generations, people did research. So in previous generations, you heard a story, you said, oh, that's an interesting story. Let me see what other news outlets have to say about this. And you go to another news outlet and you read another version of the story, which would sometimes match the version that you read and sometimes be completely different than the version you read. And you'd be, oh, okay, so there might be more to the story than I thought. And then you'd go and you'd look at more newspapers and more magazines, and you'd read a little more if you were really interested in the story. And eventually you would be able to cobble together a piece that would somehow give you an idea of what actually happened. That doesn't happen anymore. People don't read anymore. People watch one TikTok video and make up their mind about it. People watch one video, they see one clip. It doesn't matter if it's edited or not. One clip and they run with it. They get one meme in their, and that's their news for the day. And that's how people are making political decisions and decisions on who to back and who to vote for. That's how people are making decisions on who to condemn and who to attack. It's amazing. And when you question these people and you say, I see your meme, I understand what it says, but that's not quite exactly what happened. Let's take a look at the actual fact of what happened. They laugh in your face, they ignore you, or they call you a fascist. They call you a Nazi. That's what they do. Let me give you a perfect example of this phenomenon. And it's not a new phenomenon. It's been happening for a while, but let me give you a perfect example of this. I've been hearing for years and years and years that Donald Trump said that there were good people on both sides when he was talking about this is what they tell me, he was talking about a Nazi rally in Charlottesville, North Carolina. And that's what they told me. And I remember I was watching the press conference live when it happened. And that's not exactly what he said. You see, CNN started the misinformation about that particular piece of misinformation by cutting his sentence right after he said there were good people on both sides. He actually said there were good people on both sides. But if you listened or you watched or you read the transcript of the sentence immediately following that sentence, you would see that he said, there are good people on both sides, and I'm not talking about the Nazis. Nazism in America has to be condemned completely. What I am talking about is the people who are protesting for statues and people who cared about having a statue in a park. There are good people on both sides of that argument, and that's the argument he was talking about, not the Nazis marching. Those were condemned right out. But because CNN decided to cut the tape and not play the entire clip, millions of people still believe that Donald Trump supports Nazism. Because even if you point out to them, even if you show them, even if you play the video for them, showing Donald Trump saying, and I'm not talking about the Nazis, they will either accuse you of creating a clip through AI, they will accuse you of being a fascist because they don't want to hear it, or they will accuse you of a million other things. Because people hear what they want to hear and they believe what they want to believe, whether it's true or not. And so this is why I've always said on my show, for 30 years, I've said the same thing on my show, time and time again. I said, don't believe a word I say on the show. Look up every single word. And if I am wrong, contact me and tell me I was wrong. And I am big enough, I am man enough to come onto the air and apologize for making a mistake. I have no problem retracting anything I said if I was wrong, and I've done it 4 or 5 times over the past 30 years. Where I've made a statement, or I've made a comment, or I've made an analysis on the show that was proven wrong, and I've gotten back on the show and apologized for it. Because that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Do your research, understand what you're talking about, and then once you understand what you're talking about, you've done your research, you get what you're talking about, then express your opinion. But until then, you can't believe a meme. You can't believe a video clip, a 3-second video clip. Get the context. But we don't learn how to do that. Critical thinking is not taught in school anymore. It's the most amazing thing. How is critical thinking not taught in schools? Nobody teaches critical thinking. Go into a high school class. I don't care what grade you go into the older grades, and give them an article and ask them to analyze the article. Do an analysis of this article and write me a 3-paragraph analysis of the arguments in this article. They will look at you like you came from Mars. I actually tried this. I've tried this a couple of times. Where I've gone into a class, I've given out articles. I said, read the article and write me a 3-page analysis on the article. And inevitably, they'll read the article and then they'll look at you and say, I don't know what to do. And you say, write an analysis. It's not that difficult. Analyze the article and write me an analysis. What does that mean? Well, did you not learn how to think? Do you not know how to read something, think about it, then write a report on it, your thoughts on it? I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what to do. And that is continuously the answer I've gotten year after year after year after year with 17-year-olds, 17 and 18-year-olds. They don't know how to do it. And they don't know how to do it because they're not taught how to do it. And so if they're not taught how to think, if they're not taught how to analyze something, how do you expect them to understand news? How do you expect them to understand the nuances of politics? How do you expect them to understand that when a man gets up and says globalized intifada, what he's talking about is the massacre and the genocide of the Jewish people? How do you expect them to understand that? It's impossible for a young person to understand this kind of rhetoric and this kind of propaganda, because they're not taught how to think. They're not taught how to think critically. And that's the problem we live in the world today. This is the biggest problem in the world today. That people grown up, people who are now taking over politics, people now taking over the world, the young people who are now growing into leadership roles have no idea how to think critically, how to analyze something, and how to understand the nuances of the different political spheres. It's scary when you come to think about it. And so then we end up in the situation where you'll have 10,000 people on the street yelling in support of a genocidal terrorist organization, where you will have people on the street fighting and screaming and beating up and threatening Jewish people. Just the other day in Toronto, Ontario, there was an event where two former IDF soldiers went to speak. Two former Israeli soldiers went to speak, and the event was physically attacked by Arabs. I'll call them terrorists, by Arab terrorists who came in, and their intent was to hurt the people in the room. And then when they were arrested, 5 people were arrested, and when they were arrested, they found that these people weren't Arabs. They were dressed like Arabs. They wore keffiyehs, and they hid their faces like cowards. But they weren't Arabs. They were regular students. They were regular Canadian students who decided to go and stop this event because these people are genocidal murderers, baby killers. Where did they get that from? Baby killers. Hamas was the baby killers. Israel's not a baby killer. Hamas were the baby killers. Hamas burned babies alive in front of their parents on October 7th. There's video of it. Hamas took video of it. It's not even Israeli video. Hamas took the video and live streamed it on their own channels. But people are so brainwashed. People are so dumb. People are so used to just following the sheep. They're used to being sheep. That even when presented with the truth, even when you show them video evidence that they are wrong, they will never back down. They will not back down. Not at all. With video evidence, they won't back down. Does that make any sense to you? It makes no sense to me. But you and I are from a generation of people who think, people who could understand stuff, people who can analyze something, people who can look critically at a story and realize that they're being manipulated. Young people today can't. And we run into this issue over and over and over again. So anytime you see these huge rallies, and you see videos, people put up videos all the time, that they'll go up to somebody who's chanting from the river to the sea and ask them what river and what sea, and they have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know which river, which sea. Or they say globalized intifada, and you ask them, well, do you know globalizing intifada means to kill Jews? And they have no idea. You ask them about Hamas, and you ask them about is Hamas a terrorist organization, and they look at you as you came from Mars. It is very, very, very scary that we have a generation of people who believe everything they see on TikTok. And now it's getting even scarier, because now artificial intelligence, AI, is getting really smart. Now it could produce videos, and the videos are starting to look really real. And now it could produce videos of famous people saying things they never said, and it looks awfully real. And there may be people who will not be able to differentiate between the real people and the artificial intelligence created people. And that's how bad things start to happen. I'm the kind of guy, I love technology, and I use technology all the time. I use AI, I use all the latest technology. I love working with technology. And I use it every day. Every day I'm doing something something with AI, something. I'm always working in that field. But at the end, I take a look at the product that I produce after working with whatever AI tools I work with. I take a look at the product I produce and I realize that it is not human. And I also realize that most people, especially younger people, can't tell, or choose not to tell, or are too lazy to tell. I see people using artificial intelligence to do their jobs, but not checking what they're outputting, and just outputting anything. We're in a sorry state right now where AI is dumbing down the population that was already dumbed down by the dumbing down of education. So if you had a very well-educated population, a population that went through a very good education, and then AI came along, I wouldn't be so scared. But a population that was dumbed down by budget cuts and by cutting educational funding, we're at a point where AI is going to be the thinker, and the people are going to be the functionaries, except the other way around. The robot is going to control the thing. The robot is going to control the people instead of people controlling the robot. It's not a scary scenario. All this to say that the current blast of anti-Jewish sentiments across the world, the current hatred of the Jews, and we see it everywhere. It's festered and fostered by social media. And it's wrong. And the world doesn't care, and the world will not stand behind us. So the only way to counter this is to understand it. And once we understand it, then we must do everything in our power to stop it. The social media companies understand how hate is fostered through their services. They get it. They just don't care. Because the more eyeballs is the more money. That's how they make their money. As long as you make your money on hate, you're not going to be very motivated to stop it. I would say the same thing about Jewish institutions, although they may have more of a vested interest in stopping it. Scary world we live in. Anyway, if you have any suggestions on how we could solve this problem, feel free to email me, Howie at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. That's Howie at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Feel free to email me and let me know what you think. Because right now, we live in a scary world. Take care of yourselves. I'm Howie Silberger, political hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you again next week.